The rancher joked, "Marry me on our first date," the Apache girl replied. "I'll hold you to that." The rancher's life followed a steady rhythm, one shaped by sunrise and sunset, by animals that depended on him, and by land that demanded patience. He woke up every morning before the sky changed color, pulled on worn boots, and stepped outside where the air smelled of dust and grass. His ranch sat on the edge of a small southwestern town, far enough to feel quiet but close enough that everyone knew his name. People described him as friendly, hardworking, and always ready with a joke. What they did not often see was the loneliness that followed him when the laughter faded. He had grown up on that land. His father had taught him how to mend fences, care for animals, and keep promises. When his parents passed away, the ranch became his responsibility and his comfort. He stayed because the land felt like family. Relationships, however, had never lasted long. Some people did not understand his life, while others wanted more than he could give. Over time, he learned to keep things light. Jokes were easier than deep conversations. Humor protected him from disappointment. On the other side of town, the Apache girl returned home after many years away. She had left to study and work, hoping to build a future beyond the limits others expected of her. Life outside had taught her independence, but it also left scars. She had faced moments where people misunderstood her culture or treated it like a curiosity instead of something living and meaningful. When her grandmother became ill, she felt a pull stronger than any opportunity elsewhere. Family always came first. Coming back was not easy. The town felt familiar yet different. Some faces had aged, others were gone, and new ones had taken their place. She stayed with her family, helping with daily tasks, listening to old stories, and sitting quietly beside her grandmother. Those moments reminded her who she was and where she came from. She carried pride in her heritage, but also a quiet fear of being hurt again. One afternoon, fate placed them in the same space. The rancher stopped by a local supply store to pick up tools. He greeted the clerk, exchanged a few jokes, and turned around just as she stepped inside. They nearly collided near the doorway. He apologized quickly, smiling in that easy way of his. She laughed softly, surprised by his warmth. Their eyes met for only a moment, but it was long enough to leave an impression. They made small talk while waiting in line. He commented on the weather, then joked about how the dust never truly left the town. She responded with calm humor, her voice steady and thoughtful. There was no awkwardness, only a simple ease. When she mentioned she had recently returned to care for family, he nodded with genuine respect. He understood responsibility. It was written into his days. After that meeting, they ran into each other again. Sometimes it was at the store, sometimes at the local cafe. Each time, conversation flowed easily. He found himself looking forward to seeing her, noticing details like the way she listened closely before speaking or how her smile appeared slowly, as if she did not give it away without reason. She noticed how he never pretended to be someone else. He spoke plainly, joked openly, and treated everyone with the same kindness. Eventually, he asked if she would like to join him for coffee. He said it casually, as if it meant nothing more than passing time. She paused for a moment, considering. She had learned not to rush into things. Still, something about him felt safe. She agreed. Their first date was simple. They sat at a small table by the window watching people pass by. He talked about ranch life, the long days, the quiet nights. She shared stories of her travels and the lessons she had learned. They listened more than they spoke. At one point, trying to lighten the mood, he joked, "At this rate, we might as well get married." He laughed immediately, waving his hand as if to take the words back. He had said things like that before, never meaning them, but this time was different. She looked at him, not smiling, not offended. Her expression was calm, steady, and sincere. Then she said, "I'll hold you to that." The words surprised him. Not because they felt heavy, but because they felt honest. He did not know how to respond, so he smiled and nodded. They both laughed, but something had shifted. The joke lingered between them, quiet but present. After that day, their connection deepened. They began spending more time together, walking through town, talking under open skies. He showed her the ranch, explaining each task with care. She listened, asked questions, and respected the work he did. She shared stories about her people, her traditions, and the values passed down through generations. He listened closely, wanting to understand, not just hear. There were moments of silence between them that felt comfortable, not empty. He noticed how she carried herself with strength and grace. She noticed how he treated the land like something alive, something deserving of respect. Slowly, trust began to grow, yet beneath the warmth, both carried doubts. He wondered if his simple life would be enough for someone like her. She wondered if someone like him could truly understand her world. Neither spoke those thoughts aloud, but they were there, shaping each step forward. As days passed, their meetings became part of each other's routines. Friends noticed the change. The rancher smiled more, laughed more freely. The Apache girl seemed lighter, her eyes brighter. Still, neither rushed ahead. They moved carefully, aware that real things deserved patience. That was how it began. Not with certainty, but with curiosity. Not with promises, but with a joke that refused to fade. Two people from different paths found themselves walking side by side, unaware that a simple moment would slowly change both their lives. After that first date, neither of them expected life to feel different so quickly. Yet something had changed in a quiet way. The rancher went back to his routine, but his thoughts wandered more than usual. While fixing fences or checking the animals, he found himself replaying moments from their conversation. Her calm voice stayed with him. Her words, "I'll hold you to that," echoed in his mind, not like pressure, but like a question he had not known he was asking. He tried to laugh it off. He had always been the kind of man who joked easily, especially when things felt serious. Humor had helped him survive hard seasons, losses, and long nights. Still, this time felt different. He was not used to someone hearing a joke and answering with honesty instead of laughter. It unsettled him, but in a good way. The Apache girl also returned to her daily responsibilities, helping her family and spending time with her grandmother. But she noticed herself smiling for no clear reason. While cooking or cleaning, she thought about the way he listened. Many people spoke over her or made quick judgments. He did neither. He asked questions not to impress but to understand. That mattered more to her than kind words. They did not rush into seeing each other again. Days passed. Then, by chance or something else, they met again at the cafe. This time, the meeting felt natural, almost expected. He waved when he saw her. She smiled and joined him without hesitation. They talked longer than planned, until the sun began to lower and shadows stretched across the street. He asked if she would like to go for a walk. She agreed. They walked slowly, side by side, not touching, not needing to. He told her about the history of the town, stories passed down from his parents. She shared memories of her childhood, of learning traditions from elders, of sitting by fires and listening to stories meant to teach patience and strength. As the days went on, their meetings became more intentional. He invited her to the ranch, not as a grand gesture, but simply because he wanted her to see the place that shaped him. When she arrived, she took her time looking around. She noticed the way he spoke to the animals, gently and firmly. She noticed how he fixed things instead of replacing them, how he respected what he had. He worried she might find the ranch boring or too isolated. Instead, she told him she liked the quiet. She said the land felt honest. That comment stayed with him. No one had ever described his life that way before. They talked about simple things and serious ones too. He admitted that he had never been good at long relationships. She admitted that trust did not come easily to her. Neither blamed the other. They spoke like two people trying to be careful with something fragile. The joke about marriage never came up directly, but it lived between them. Sometimes he would start to make another joke, then stop himself. She noticed but did not push. She believed that real choices should come naturally, not be forced by words. Still, people around them began to notice. The cafe owner teased him lightly, asking when he would bring his friend around again. His neighbors smiled knowingly when they saw her truck parked near the ranch. Her family watched closely too. They cared about her happiness, but they also worried. They had seen her hurt before. One evening, she invited him to dinner with her family. He hesitated. He knew how important family was to her, and he did not want to disrespect anyone by stepping into a space he did not understand. She reassured him. She said he only needed to be himself. That was harder than it sounded, but he agreed. Dinner was warm and quiet. Conversation moved slowly at first. He spoke when spoken to, listened carefully, and showed respect. Her family noticed his manners, his patience, and the way he looked at her, not with ownership but with care. It eased some of their concern, though not all. Trust, like love, took time. After dinner, they stepped outside together. The sky was wide and filled with stars. He told her he had been thinking about that joke. He said he had not meant to say it lightly, but also had not expected her answer. She listened without interrupting. Then she said she did not take it as a promise, only as a window into who he was when he felt comfortable. Her honesty surprised him again. He realized she was not holding him to words but to intentions. That realization made him reflect deeply. For the first time in years, he considered what commitment might look like if it grew slowly, with respect instead of fear. At the same time, she faced her own questions. She wondered if his world would ever fully make space for hers. She wondered if affection could survive misunderstandings, if kindness could handle conflict. She did not expect perfection. She only wanted effort. They continued to meet, talk, and learn. There were moments of disagreement, small but important. Sometimes he said something without realizing it touched on a sensitive topic. Sometimes she pulled back when emotions grew strong. Each time, they chose conversation over silence. That choice mattered. The joke faded from laughter into something quieter. It became a shared memory that marked the beginning of something neither had planned. Neither of them said the word future, but both felt it standing just ahead, waiting. By the end of that season, they both understood one thing clearly. What had started as chance and humor was becoming something real. Not because of a promise made too soon, but because of two people willing to keep showing up, day after day, learning how to stand beside each other without losing themselves. When you're ready, I can expand part 3 in the same simple, engaging style and length. As their time together increased, life slowly began to test what they were building. What once felt light and hopeful now carried weight. Not the kind that crushed them, but the kind that made every step more careful. Both of them felt it, even when neither spoke about it directly. The rancher started noticing the difference in himself. Before, his days ended quietly. Now, when evening came, he looked for her truck on the road or checked his phone more often than he liked to admit. Yet along with that closeness came fear. He had lived most of his life alone, depending only on himself and the land. Letting someone matter this much felt risky. He worried about failing her, about saying the wrong thing, about not being enough. She felt her own struggles growing. Being with him felt good, steady, and safe, but it also stirred old memories. In the past, she had trusted people who did not take the time to understand her world. They liked the idea of her, not the reality. She promised herself she would not repeat that mistake. She watched closely, listened carefully, and measured actions more than words. The first real tension appeared quietly. One afternoon, while talking about the future in general terms, he mentioned expanding the ranch and spending even more time there. He spoke without thinking, imagining a life that made sense to him. She listened, then fell silent. He noticed immediately. She explained, gently but firmly, that her life had always included community, shared responsibility, and staying connected to her people. The idea of being tied only to one place, far from her roots, scared her. He had not meant to exclude her world, but he realized that he had pictured the future from only his point of view. That moment stayed with both of them. It did not turn into an argument, but it created distance. They saw each other less for a while, each claiming to be busy, though both knew it was more than that. Silence filled the space where laughter used to live. During that time apart, the rancher spent long hours working, but his mind stayed restless. He thought about how easily he had assumed things. He realized that loving someone meant making room, not expecting them to fit into a life already built. This was new for him. The land had always come first. Now, he wondered if there was space for more without losing himself. She, too, reflected deeply. Sitting beside her grandmother, she listened to stories about patience, about choices that shaped generations. Her grandmother reminded her that love was not about sameness, but about respect. She asked her to look at the man's actions, not her fears. Was he trying to learn? Was he willing to listen? Those questions mattered. When they finally spoke again, it was not dramatic. He stopped by her family's place one evening, unsure if she would want to see him. She came outside when she heard his truck. They stood facing each other, both nervous in a way they had not been before. He spoke first. He admitted he had been afraid of losing the life he knew, and in that fear, he had not considered what she might lose. He told her he was still learning and that he wanted to understand her world better, even if it took time. She listened quietly, then shared her own fears. She told him she did not expect him to change who he was, only to walk beside her with awareness. She said trust grew when effort was visible, not when promises were made too quickly. That conversation did not solve everything, but it reopened the door. They agreed to move forward more slowly, with honesty. They decided not to rush toward labels or expectations. Instead, they focused on understanding. As weeks passed, they began meeting in different spaces. Sometimes at the ranch, sometimes with her family, sometimes at community gatherings she invited him to attend. He felt unsure at first, aware of how little he knew. Still, he showed respect by listening, asking questions, and staying open. People noticed his effort. That mattered more than perfection. At the same time, she made an effort to learn more about ranch life. She woke early with him on some mornings, helped with simple tasks, and learned the rhythm of his days. She saw how responsibility shaped him, how the land depended on consistency. She began to understand why leaving it completely would feel like losing a part of himself. Despite progress, doubts returned now and then. Some people questioned whether they were too different. Others warned them quietly about challenges ahead. Those voices added pressure, especially when both were already uncertain. One evening, after a long day, they sat together without talking much. The silence felt heavier than usual. Finally, she asked him if the joke still meant anything to him. The question caught him off guard. He did not answer right away. He stared at the ground, then admitted that what started as a joke had become something serious in his heart. But he also said he was afraid of speaking too soon and hurting her if he could not live up to it. She nodded. She told him she had never wanted to trap him with words. She only wanted honesty. Hearing that eased something inside him. He realized that the pressure he felt came mostly from himself. From that point on, they chose to face uncertainty together instead of alone. They did not pretend everything was easy. Some days felt confusing. Some conversations were uncomfortable, but they kept returning to the same choice, to listen instead of retreat. Slowly, trust deepened. Not because problems disappeared, but because they learned how to meet them. Their connection matured, moving beyond excitement into something steadier, something real. By the end of that season, both of them understood that love was no longer just possibility. It was work, patience, and courage. They did not know exactly where the path would lead, but they knew they were no longer walking it separately. As time moved forward, What they shared began to settle into something deeper and more serious. The excitement of something new was still there, but it was now balanced by responsibility. Both of them felt the shift. This was no longer just about enjoying each other's company. It was about choosing each other, even on days when that choice felt heavy. The rancher became more thoughtful in his actions. He no longer spoke carelessly about the future. Instead, he asked questions. He wanted to know what mattered to her, what traditions she hoped to keep, and what fears still lived quietly in her heart. He did not always understand everything she shared, but he listened with patience. For him, listening was a new kind of work, and he took it seriously. She noticed the change. It gave her comfort, but it also made her reflect on her own choices. She had built strong walls over the years to protect herself from disappointment. Now, those walls felt both safe and limiting. Letting someone in meant risking pain, but keeping distance meant missing something meaningful. She stood between those two truths, unsure at times which way to lean. Their families remained present in their journey. His friends asked gentle but curious questions. They could see that he was different. He was calmer, more focused, and more open than before. Some teased him, saying he had finally met someone who made him slow down. He laughed, but inside he knew they were right. Her family watched closely as well. They valued tradition and care, not quick decisions. They respected his effort but waited to see consistency. She understood their caution. Family had always been her anchor. Their approval mattered, not because she needed permission, but because she wanted peace on all sides. One afternoon, the rancher surprised her by asking to attend a community gathering with her. He did not ask for praise or attention. He simply wanted to show support. She felt nervous but proud. At the gathering, he stayed close but not intrusive. He greeted people politely, listened more than he spoke, and followed her lead. That quiet respect spoke louder than any grand gesture. Later that evening, she told him how much his presence had meant to her. He admitted that stepping into her world had felt uncomfortable at first, but it also felt right. He realized that love was not about standing in the spotlight, but about standing beside someone when it mattered. Still, uncertainty had not disappeared. There were nights when the rancher lay awake, wondering if he was ready for a lifelong commitment. The land depended on him. His responsibilities were not small. Could he share that weight without losing balance? Could he make space for a life that was not entirely centered around the ranch? She faced similar thoughts. She wondered if choosing him would mean constantly explaining herself, translating her values, or defending her choices. She wanted partnership, not constant struggle. On difficult days, doubt crept in quietly, making her question whether love alone could carry them forward. Those doubts reached a turning point during a misunderstanding. It was small, but it hurt. He had made plans without telling her, assuming she would understand. She felt overlooked. Her reaction was not loud, but it was firm. She told him that silence had been the hardest part of her past, and she could not accept it in the present. The conversation that followed was difficult but honest. He listened, truly listened, and understood that intention did not erase impact. He apologized without excuses. That moment changed something between them. She saw that he could take responsibility. He saw that honesty, even when uncomfortable, strengthened trust. After that, they began speaking more openly about the future, not in detailed plans but in values. They talked about respect, patience, and shared effort. They talked about what home meant to each of them. They talked about how they would handle conflict instead of avoiding it. One evening, while sitting together under a wide sky, he brought up the old joke again. This time, there was no laughter in his voice. He asked her if she still remembered what she had said that day at the cafe. She smiled softly and nodded. He told her that what began as humor had grown into something serious in his heart. He said he did not want to rush or pressure her, but he also did not want to hide his feelings anymore. He wanted to build something real with intention and respect. She listened carefully. Her answer was not immediate. She took a moment, feeling the weight of her own fears and hopes. Then she told him that she had been holding him to effort, not words. And so far, he had shown her that effort mattered to him. That night marked a quiet shift. There was no grand promise, no sudden decision. Instead, there was clarity. They both understood that commitment was no longer a distant idea. It was present, growing, and asking to be acknowledged. From that point on, they moved with greater confidence. They still faced challenges, but they no longer questioned whether they were on the same path. They were learning how to walk it together, adjusting their pace, supporting each other when one felt uncertain. By the end of that chapter of their lives, they both knew that the joke had transformed into a serious bond. What remained was one final step, one final choice, waiting to be made when the time felt right. The final step did not arrive suddenly. It came slowly, shaped by many small moments that added up over time. By now, both of them felt the difference in their hearts. What once felt uncertain had become steady. The fear that used to follow them had grown quieter, replaced by something stronger: trust. The rancher noticed it first in the way he planned his days. Before, his life had been about work alone. Now he thought about balance. He made time, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The land still mattered deeply to him, but it no longer stood alone at the center of his world. There was space now for partnership. She noticed her own change too. She no longer felt like she had to guard every feeling. She still carried caution, but it no longer controlled her. With him, she felt heard. Not just listened to, but truly understood, even when words were few. That sense of safety gave her strength. One evening, after a long but peaceful day, they sat together watching the sun lower behind the hills. The sky was wide and calm. Neither spoke for a while. Silence had become something they shared comfortably, not something to escape. Finally, he spoke. His voice was steady, not playful like before. He told her that he had thought carefully about what commitment meant. He said he did not see it as losing freedom, but as choosing direction. He wanted a life built on shared values, not quick promises. She listened closely. She could tell he had taken time with his words. That mattered to her more than any grand speech. When he finished, she took a breath and spoke honestly. She said she did not need perfection. She needed consistency, respect, and effort. She said she believed they had built those things together. They did not rush from that conversation into action. Instead, they let the understanding settle. Over the next weeks, they spoke with their families. His friends were happy but also serious, reminding him of responsibility. Her family asked thoughtful questions. They wanted to know how he planned to honor her values and support her connection to her people. He answered with honesty. He did not claim to know everything, but he promised to keep learning. That promise, spoken without pressure, earned quiet approval. The decision to marry was made together, calmly and clearly. There was no surprise announcement, no dramatic moment. It felt right because it felt earned. The wedding they chose reflected that same spirit. It was small, meaningful, and respectful. There was no need to impress anyone. What mattered was intention. Elements from both of their worlds were included thoughtfully, not as symbols but as lived values. The land, the people, and the shared space between them all played a role. On the day itself, the rancher felt nervous in a way he had never felt before. Not fear, but awareness. He understood the weight of the promise he was making. When he saw her, calm and strong, he felt steady again. She felt something similar. Standing there, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The joke, the doubts, the distance, the effort. None of it felt wasted. Every step had shaped what they were now. Their vows were simple. No dramatic words, just truth. Commitment spoken clearly, without humor this time. When they finished, there was a quiet sense of completion, not an ending, but a beginning built on solid ground. Life after the wedding did not suddenly become easy. There were still long days, misunderstandings, and moments of tiredness. But now, they faced those things together. Problems became conversations instead of walls. Differences became lessons instead of threats. The ranch remained important, but it changed too. It became a shared place, not just a responsibility. Her presence brought new rhythms, new ideas. His consistency provided stability. Together, they shaped a life that honored both roots and growth. Sometimes they laughed about how it all began. About a joke said without thought, and an answer given with quiet confidence. The rancher admitted that her reply had changed him more than he realized at the time. She admitted that she had seen sincerity beneath his humor even then. Their story did not become famous. It did not need to be. It lived in everyday moments, shared meals, early mornings, open conversations, and mutual respect. That was enough. In the end, what made their story real was not the joke or the surprise. It was the choice they made again and again, to listen, to learn, and to stand beside each other with honesty. And that choice made daily turned a light-hearted moment into a lasting life together.